Harun Farocki's Parallel, Traversing the Endless Same. Never has a creative medium increased in versatility as rapidly as the video game. Equally, never have the boundaries of a medium been so intertwined with technological progression, and hence so transient. Just as layers of anthropological strata can be mapped and dated to certain events, the expansion of games as a medium can be linked to developments in our technological landscape. In other words, how a simulation of our reality changes and evolves according to the technological era of our physical landscape. Harun Farocki's final work, his Parallel series, explores games as a break from cinema, as a medium to be broken, and as a lesson in borders. Parallel is unique in the realm of video art for its exploration of cinema in a post-cinema landscape, the virtual reality, from the perspective of a filmmaker. To what extent do games share a grammar with cinema? What happens when simulations continue to emulate our world with increasing verisimilitude? What happens at the edge of a genre? And what do these questions mean for my own practice? Part 1. Digital Twins and Imperfect Copies. Farocki's career saw the interrogation of numerous forms of inhuman logic, the logic of war, the logic of machine vision, and now the logic of simulation. All of these contemporary art projects linked by their inquiry into our own world, via comparison to the paradigms introduced by various technological developments which irrevocably altered our own physical reality. Parallel begins with a sequence of stills depicting progressively detailed and fuller trees from various games. These trees are sufficiently different from real trees that there is no expectation from the player that they can be interacted with. It is only once virtual trees become imitations of their real counterparts, that we are surprised that they do not behave realistically. In this simulation, exact realism is not only unnecessary, but in fact detrimental. Throughout the Parallel series, Farocki appears to become increasingly fascinated by discrepancies between simulated laws and our own, for instance how rocks float on the ocean's surface. These virtual laws are an extension of our own, just as the simulated realities are an extension of our own. Within the context of my own practice, I would liken this concept of virtual physical pairings to the orthodox understanding of the digital twin, an idea which has blossomed since the creation of Parallel. Just as virtual trees emulate only the necessary traits of the real tree, a digital twin will bear only the key similarities to enable function. The color of the twin can be irrelevant, as can its material, and even surroundings. For example, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers have united the concept of the digital twin with surveillance, and arguably cinema, in their 2007 development of a smart camera network that can monitor and reconstruct a real, physical space in a digital environment. Their reconstructions employ the term reality emulator, and the live feed of pedestrians within a simulated CGI environment is one of the first cases of footage using digital twins to combine footage from digital and synthetic video. As the bounds between real and virtual become increasingly elusive, I believe that there is a place for art, like Parallel, which explores and contests this barrier. By appropriating the use of digital twins, developed for surveillance within industry, this boundary becomes explorable as a physical virtual membrane which only they can traverse. Through my practice I seek to explore the nature of this boundary, and as such much of my work, like the reality emulator, resides within its shroud, made visible only via the joint perception of physical and synthetic cameras, such as my video series, In-Engine, which applies the logic of replays within a simulation, to my existence in the real world. Even my ongoing project, Caught, Framed, in which I attempt to evade the surveillance-fueled virtual comparison, on which digital twins operate. Part 2. Playing as the Camera. In 1997, Mark Wolf theorized a shared grammar between games and cinema, viewing games as an extension of the ideas of cinema. This is evident from cutscenes to the similar dynamics of off and on-screen space between the two genres. Farocki himself described Parallel as dealing with computer animations as their becoming a general model, surpassing film. The key similarity, and key difference between cinema and simulation, comes down to the camera, specifically, the player's agency over the camera, their power over depiction. From Parallel 2 onwards, Farocki begins to explore the boundaries of virtual cinema, using virtual cameras to view and traverse the impossible and the illogical. Through virtual lenses, Farocki creates shots that are not of the real world, shots that are simultaneously logical and deterministic, yet also uncanny, humorous, and absurd. Parallel 2 reveals that there is only a shared grammar between games and cinema if games are played as intended. Hito Styles' film How Not to Be Seen also uses this Farockian style of humor to challenge the conventional logic of its own medium, applying humanity to the logic of surveillance and imaging to reinvent the semiotics of the medium, challenging the inverted conventions of the simulated reality, where they oppose our own. A viewer cannot break the grammar of cinema, Yet any player can reinvent the grammar of a game, transcend it even. Hence, the player is more akin to a director than a viewer, as a director can ignore the grammar of cinema, while a viewer cannot. My own practice builds upon photography and film as a foundation. My endeavor to explore novel concepts begins with where the camera is pointed. Working almost as a director, I find myself coordinating separate virtual and physical cameras. In this way I create work which exists only in intersections, images which resides in that elusive boundary which separates the virtual and physical facets of contemporary living. In simultaneously harnessing and interrogating the grammar of both digital and analog videography, I use these cameras to generate a world emblematic of the gaze that falls upon it. A world in which competing logics crash and sweep in perpetual similarity. My ongoing project, The World is a Video, plays into this idea of breaking down the grammar of cinema, omitting all plot, and even sense of time, in favor of perpetual similarity and repeating decay, a project based on real video recordings, which has lost all connection to the real. It is the gaze that falls upon the video, the gaze which applies real-world logic to this unreal project, which places this work on the border between real and surreal. Part 3. The Edge. In exploring these in-game borders, Farocki's parallel series reveals their insubstantiality and malleability, one that both parallels and contrasts the bounds and restrictions of traditional cinema. Every genre has borders which the genre's grammar dictate ought not be crossed. The parameters of a canvas, the view of a camera, the individual frames of an animation. A simulation exists within a border which often has a remarkable sense of physicality. Outside of that border must be made of the same theoretical, teleological material as the gallery wall which surrounds a painting. This space is ontologically as important as the game space itself. The accessible and the inaccessible exist in the same dichotomy as the areas in and out of a camera's sight, the frames and pause between. After Farocki deliberately misuses the game's on-screen space in Parallel 2, Parallel 3 examines the borders of these realities. Beyond Farocki's work, Mel Chin's artwork Revival Field, an artwork which uses hyper-accumulating plants to reveal an ecosystem where there previously existed only divisions, is another apt comparison of this concept in action. While Revival Field reveals a rich and blossoming ecosystem between humanity, technology and ecology, Parallel reveals an ecosystem between physical and digital realities, exposing the weakness of their borders, and the many forms they take. Vast improvements in processing power have led to meta-level changes in the form games can take, from unmoving screens containing the whole world area, to vast yet pre-rendered 3D environments enclosed by realistic borders. Returning to the analogy of the painting and gallery wall, the painting is no longer fixed relative to the gallery wall, but is now relative to the gaze of the viewer. This painting can expand and mature with the viewer. The genre has gained mastery over its own border, and in doing so strayed even further from cinema. This trait of infinity, the ability to exist wherever needed, appears incredibly versatile within contemporary art. Indeed, within my own practice I am looking for ways to populate many mediums with my ideas, allowing the novelties of each medium to strengthen my work, and for my work to be displayed across borders. Just as Parallel sheds light on the mutual affectations and influences of reality and simulation, I hope for my work to carry insight into the dynamics between physical and digital landscapes. I view this understanding as essential in the wake of ChatGPT and virtual reality projects such as the Metaverse. My collaborative project, Scholar of the First Essence, explores the dynamics between these landscapes, and how the seemingly impenetrable border between the two can be bridged. Inspired by the boundary-dissolving work of Mel Chin and Harun Farocki, I have endeavored to bridge analog and digital media and push the boundaries of my genres. To accomplish this, we are creating a pocket-dimensional landscape which acts as an ecosystem of thought, encompassing pop culture's understanding of technophobia, not only in past decades, but with a view to the perils of the future. In conclusion, Parallel reveals how sensitive simulations can truly be to player agency, how the very grammar of the genre can be restructured according to the will of the director. In essence, Parallel is Farocki's declaration of just how ready the genre of simulation is to enter the art world and affect lives. With a level of personalization and adaptability which has arguably superseded that of cinema, the grammar of cinema can no longer accurately bound all simulation. The genre's potential is facilitated by its unprecedented dependence on our technological landscape, a dynamic which has allowed for games to achieve a level of mediated verisimilitude which will only improve as new layers form in our aforementioned anthropological strata. In my own practice, with this in mind, I seek to deploy contemporary art as a medium to better understand and convey, the ever-present forces which affect our lives across both physical and digital realities across projects such as in-engine, caught, framed, the world is a video, and scholar of the fifth essence. By turning my lenses towards physical and virtual paradigms in equal measure, my work can exist in the divide between these two realities, and in doing so allow the two to converse within my practice at the edge of genre.